So the Visual Spatial Sketchpad, this is the component that deals with visual and spatial information in the short-term memory. You can consider it the inner eye that you can use to visualize a mental picture. This can be either from your sensory register, basically from your environment, or it can be from your long-term memory. We know that we're able to remember memories. When I asked you at the beginning of this unit to remember a very vivid memory from your past that is personal, it is likely that you were able to remember images from that time. Okay, for example, I was able to remember standing at the end of that race waiting for my friends. I can remember this as it's happening right now. I can see what it was like. Okay, so this part of the working model deals with visual and spatial information, and it is not necessary that it's only coming from the environment. Again, it goes back to the idea that the multi-story model was only unidirectional, whereas processing of memory can be bidirectional. Okay, so we can have images and visuals coming from our long-term memory back into our short-term memory. Okay, so if I ask you to, let's say, remember the route to school, okay, from your house, and you're not at school right now, you would be able to do that. Okay, maybe some of you take a metro from Guangzhou and you remember each part of the route visually. Okay, another thing is, for example, when we lose a key, right? I don't know about you guys, but when I lose something, I try tracing back to the places I've been, okay? And I'm trying to do it visually so I can remember where I could have potentially left the key in the space, okay? So these are examples of ways that you can try tapping into your long-term memory to visualize certain things, okay? So the final component of the short-term memory or working model memory is the episodic buffer. So this is the latest addition to the working memory model. You can compare it to sort of like a mental TV screen where all the information from your senses, short-term memory, long-term memory is projected, and it is now ready for you to use. So this is basically the process of integrating different types of information from different areas and putting it together to make sense into one episode. Okay, a very good example is the fact that when we watch a movie, right, we don't remember it as two different things. We're remembering it as the character, which is the visual, speaking those things. So we remember it as one episode. We don't remember the visuals differently, and we don't remember the auditory or the voice differently. Okay, so the events occur in a continuing sequence as integrated with chunks of information. So episodes. Okay, um, and this integration process also explains why we can experience memories in a coordinated sequence rather than as discrete segments. Again, if I was to remember that race, I would be able to remember the fact that um, everyone was screaming, my mom was cheering, and I was running. I can remember standing at the end of the race. I can remember my friends. So I can remember it as a whole. Okay, I don't remember it as just voices or just visuals. Okay, so that explains why the episodic buffer then is responsible for us to integrate these different senses together and make sense of it and put it together to make it available for us to use. To finish off, I'm going to go over Landry and Lang's 2011 study, which is in support of the working memory model. So the researchers aim to investigate the effect of articulatory suppression on recall of a written list of letters. Okay, so articulatory suppression is the process of inhibiting memory performance or interfering with memory performance by speaking while being presented with an item to remember. Okay, so a good example of articulatory suppression is when a teacher is talking in class or when you're asked to read something in class and you are instead spending time or spending your attention talking to your friend, then you are interfering with your phonological loop. Okay, so the effectiveness of you remembering or comprehending what the teacher is saying or what you're reading then reduces because you are suppressing yourself articulatorily. Okay, this research used an independent measures design, which basically means that there were two different groups that got two different conditions administered on them. Both the groups were exposed to 10 different lists of words, which had 7 letters that sounded dissimilar in each. Okay, so one list could be F, K, L, M, R, Q, X, Q. Okay. And for the experimental group, once they were exposed to this list, they were exposed to lists individually. Okay, so once they were exposed to this first list, they would then have to start saying either one or two for at a rate of 2 words per second. Okay, so it would be kind of like one, 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 until the researcher told them to write down the pattern. Okay, they would take this pattern out of the screen and then they would have to write it down on a worksheet. Okay, as for the control group, they were exposed to the same list of words or letters rather, and they were exposed to it for 5 seconds, followed by a waiting period of 5 seconds, and then they had to write it down on the worksheet as well. Okay, what the researchers found was that the control group performed better on this task than the experimental group. Okay, the mean of the correct answers, or rather the rate at which the control group got correct answers, was 75%, which was then compared to only 45% in the experimental group. This then goes on to support the experimental hypotheses, which is that when an individual is doing two tasks belonging to the same system, so either phonological loop or the visual spatial sketchpad, they are not able to do it as effectively. Okay, and this is, in this case, this disruption of the phonological loop happens through the articulatory suppression, which then results the accuracy of the working memory. Okay, articulatory suppression prevents rehearsal of the phonological loop because of overload. Okay, there's too much similar kind of information or similar modality of information coming in, which is verbal. Okay, and auditory. So for them to really put attention into remembering the words is difficult because they're having to speak one out loud at the same time. Okay, so this is a very good example of how, or rather in what cases, multitasking may not work. Okay, but at the same time, it also suggests that multitasking can work when the task does not involve doing two different things from the same system. Okay? So what you're going to do next class is you're going to work in your groups and you're going to discuss the contrasts of the 3 different models that we've discussed. A question that is likely to come for the memory models of memory is a contrast question. So you need to then look at what are the differences in the structure? Is there something that they say about the process that is different? Are there additional components? Okay, so this is what you will be doing next class, after which you will start working on an essay, an LAQ essay. Okay, you will have this next class, but also Monday to work on that, or at least half of the class on Monday to work on that. Okay.